I'm a video editor. I'm also a system engineer at WaggleNet. I started this whole damn thing, right?
Yeah.
It's basically the whole idea that, you know, many people don't realize that engineering isn't the only important part of engineering. It's the marketing. So we need to make killer videos for killer publicity.
Because the first time we made something like a semester ago, and then like we couldn't really figure out like a point to it, so we just kind of like we filmed the whole thing, and then we just kind of stopped filming it, and we just didn't really edit it. But this time I think the writing process has been a lot more strict.
So we have a story. Jimmy wrote it.
And everyone reviewing the script, everyone pushing up issues and pull requests on GitHub. Like
We tried to draw the storyboard first, and then using the edit software.
I feel like being engineers, we incorporate a lot more technology into our workflow process than most filmmakers do.
This cluster, which is usually used for compiling code to compile our movie set, and we also wrote like software scripts to match up our footage with the storyboard.
And we edit the movies on Linux.
Filmmaking itself is more or less an engineering before it was an art, because, you know, considering the University of Illinois invented the movies as we know now.
It's like you have to have the basic skills, but honestly, at least you have the idea to do it. You can try to combine everything together, and then it's not that hard. It's your story, so if you want to be the director, you know the story, and you can set up how the story is built, and then set up how this whole every shot will be look like. So it helps you to think and be creative. I think it's fun.
Have fun with it and put your ideas out there. That's kind of the whole point of filmmaking to me.
Usually you have to coordinate so many things. You have to know what constraints you have to know what is in demand, and that just sounds like engineering.
And we're live. Oh my god, mic test, mic test. And we're live from the University of Illinois, the very university whose ECE department invented sound on film, also known as the movies as we know now. So today's talk is brought to you by WaggleNet and IEEE UIUC. So before we begin on with the talk, here's some sponsorship gratitude. So WaggleNet is a cool research club. You've heard about ECE Illinois. We're to build the world's most user-friendly, feature-complete, and magically functional Internet of Things framework for agricultural, beekeeping, and research use, as all as our excuses of having fun, including doing this colloquium. It's never too late to join WaggleNet. Just crash into our meetings Wednesday evenings, or check out wagglenet.org to find out. We're a super popular club. Just go and Google us, and you will know. Our Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers is the parent to our ECE students here. It is a professional organization for helping students with projects, finding mentors and funds, providing education and workshops, and that teaches engineers to do what they like to do. So I'd like to thank both organizations for hosting today's event. Of course, we're WaggleNet. And my name is Jimmy. I invented the idea of WaggleNet CineSquad, and here is Bella and Mike. Both will be speaking to us today about filmmaking. So as you can see from the title, lights, cameras, engineering. We are engineers, and we like to make films, and we'd like to prove to you that you can do it too, including those of you watching the live stream, because if you dare to watch the live stream, you like videos. And if you like videos, you should like making videos. And that's why we're here to share all the filmmaking experiences with you tonight. So for today's talk, we're gonna first help you kickstart your filmmaking career, maybe not career or as a hobby, as engineers, and to take advantage of your engineering knowledge into filmmaking and create some interesting twists in the films you make. And if that's already one thing in the past for you, we'd like to also help you guys recognize some of the filmmaking practices that are seriously involving engineering. For example, ECE and other disciplines of engineering too. But if you check that box too, then sit back and relax, and this is pretty fun stuff. And for those of you watching the live stream, because the live stream has a little delay, so if you like to ask a question, feel free to ask in the chat section, and we'll be happy to answer them in the end of the lecture. I'm in colloquium. All right. So before that, if we talk about filmmaking, what is the first thing you're gonna ask? Well, what camera do we use, right? even though we seriously object this kind of opinion that filmmaking is about cameras or about equipments, let's just do a full tech disclosure once and for all. Because this is not filmmaking, but you should know about these equipments, and if you need these equipments, you will feel it, and you will need to know what these equipments are called. So two things are your friends for filmmaking. One of them is 15 millimeter rods, and the other one is a 1/4-inch screws. So if you have any advanced needs for filming equipment, you will realize these two things are almost just important things like bread and butter in your filming bag. You'll use them to mount everything. But so far, you don't need it. You don't even need to care about them. And if you're talking about tech, here's tech. We're just giving you a system. Don't pay everything we're using. Every camera we use, every setting you need. And if you want to check out the slides, feel free to check it at the end of the event. But we're not talking about things today. So the first thing, if we go in the order, lights, camera, and action, lights comes first, right? So lighting is absolutely important in videos. Some of you might not have realized that. Usually for professional videos, we use a softbox. WaggleNet doesn't use a softbox. We just use a tripod and a light and a diffuser panel. But usually, if you have sufficient lighting on the person, you'll make such a difference compared to not light at all, or just relying on the natural light. You'll realize because the contrast is so artistic when you have the light on the subject that you're filming. But of course, you can use your phone. Your phone has LED light, and you can leverage that as your lighting sources if you're just making amateur stuff. Next up, cameras. Well, you guys are probably all camera nerds, and you care about $15 million equipment or something. So here is just for your pleasure. Usually, first you need a way to hold on to your camera. So a shoulder rig or a handle is usually the best bet. But if you want to go any more advanced, you can use or electronic gimbals that can stabilize the camera, using battery power. But we're not talking about that. Then for the camera, let's just put the most expensive camera up here for a demo. But usually a camera comes with a lens or a battery. And if you're spending millions of dollars for a camera, it doesn't come with either. So buy separate lens and batteries too. And of course, here's something cheap actually. If you are doing a lot of filter effects kind of filming, a matte box is going to be really useful to you. So basically, a matte box is something that sits in front of your lens, and you putting glass panels as filters, and you can change the filters really fast. Instead of if you do any photography, you will realize the pain, right? If you need to keep changing the filters, screw them onto the lens, this basically eliminates the needs of doing that because it's kind of a quick release for all the panels. And also, if you're doing any serious filmmaking, a monitor is a must. Just like our setup there, we have a monitor. It's plugged into the HDMI output of the camera, and that makes you see much more clearly because cameras usually don't come with a larger screen. And if you have that much money to buy a camera, your camera probably doesn't come with a screen at all. So that's for the camera, but of course you can use your phone. The last one will be editing, right? Editing the actions together is all of filmmaking. But we're not going to talk about what editing software we use. We're just randomly listing 3 popular software here. Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, and Final Cut. Each is an industry standard of its own. Premiere is usually used by amateurs, and DaVinci Resolve is what we use. But we're using it because it works on Linux. And if you're an Apple fan, iMovie works on the phones pretty perfectly, so you can use that as well. It has limited functionality, but it's very it produces pro-level video. But of course, you can use your phone, and your phone crammed into a 10-inch form factor, pretending to be a computer, which is not. But that software is gorgeous. It's called LumaFusion, just by the way. We're using it on site casually. So in conclusion, you should have a phone. But of course, we're not here to tell you that cameras are important. We're using professional cameras, including the one that's streaming today's event live. But you will need to know what is filmmaking before you know what these equipments are. And when you need the equipment, you will know that you need the equipment. You can't just reverse the order and order the equipment first, because if you don't know how to make films, the equipment doesn't do much. Sometimes your cameras might even stand in your way of filmmaking because your phones can do so much magic for you to make your video look good that cameras don't. So what is filmmaking? Filmmaking is about ideas. It's just about presenting your ideas to the world and it's just another form factor for media. You're telling a story with film, and you're immersing the people who are watching your film in your story. So basically, you're making people see what you see and hear what you hear using the magic of video and audio editing. And films are super easy to make and super easy to watch if you have realized, especially in today's age, your phone can stream video really, really efficiently, and that means you can just click on the video and it will pop out, and you can watch for 5 seconds and close it, just like today's live stream. But just kidding. And films are really easy to make because you can basically tune into whatever is happening in the event, turn on your camera, and start filming. And you just take the file and do your editing. It's not like literature or anything that you need to first remember the details and then try to express it into a piece and then vet it and do all sorts of detailed editing to it. Film is just film. You can basically take the raw video and upload it if it looks nice enough. And apparently professionals agree with us. People from those who come up to film editing from just posting pictures, and people who come down to film editing from producing TV ads. Online online video editing from TV ads. All think that film is really important, and for us engineers, making films of the work that we have done just makes us look really good on the resume, because our employer can just go and check out our 60-second video about what we're making, and that will make all the difference to your resume versus others. So I think a decade ago people were talking about pics or it didn't happen. But today, because the film adds such more details to just a stationary image, and it's at least one more dimension, we can confidently say that a video is worth 1,000 squared words, and people really love watching them. So let's start telling our story. But of course, that's enough talking. I've talked too much, and we have made a film, and this film has been in production for only 2 weeks, so we only shot scene 1. But we'd like to show you this film. It's basically 40 seconds of video clips, and tell you all about it behind the scene. So. I'm presenting you Felix. This is a WaggleNet Epic. We're using it as an advertisement for one of the key technology they're creating that we'd like to keep secret for now. This movie will be on university screens early December. And if you just realized, we starred Professor Chris Schmitz in the video. He's father to EC 110, and he was really happy to just act out as himself or Felix, a crazy engineer who broke the entire ECB in fact in this film. And Bella Chen is the director to this film, so I'd like to invite Bella to the stage to tell you guys all about it, how we made it, what happened, what went wrong, and what went right. Right, Bella?
Hi. Okay. Hi, I'm Bella. So as Jimmy said, I'm the director for this Felix scene you just watched, and Felix is the guy who just burned out his circuit. And if you want to know what is happening and what serious consequence Felix just caused, you will find out in December, because we haven't finished the rest of the shots. But refer this as an example, we can show you how we do the planning and the shooting. So as long as you have a story in mind, you can start designing and writing your scripts, which is very important. This is part of our script for Felix, and as you can see, there is a setting and then the storylines and the lines for the character. So because we need to refer the scripts as a reference when you start shooting, so you have to focus on what is happening and what the character is saying and what details you want to capture when you shoot. So when everything is in the script, you can start the next step, which is the storyboard. Storyboard can be very important because when you think about your own story, it makes sense because you may appear some image in your mind, but when you want to show the story to others, they get all the information from the shots. So when we do the storyboard for the Felix, we start from drawing it. We want to set up a mysterious atmosphere, so we start the opening camera to come from the back, and then from the top to show you guys what Felix is working on, and then for the profile, because we want to focus it on the coffee and the explosion of the circuit. So then we use another software, which is Storyboarder. This one is an open source software and it's very user friendly. You can use it to import your own drawings into that, and then it will come out with a final draft that is like with the descriptions and with the labels, which we can use it when you shoot your the following things. So then the preparation is done. We come to the shots. You can just look at it and be aware of those shots, like the long ones and the medium ones, because I don't think it's that important. Everyone can use it, and you don't need to remember the name. But before you do your shots, you have to be aware of which type of story you want to present. Like if you want to tell a story or show the story or simply a montage. I think the montage one is pretty simple because it's like the combination of different smart shots. And then we have an example for the montage. You can watch it. So for the most of the part is from last year, and at that time we don't even know what filmmaking is. So just a reminder before you get your shooting, you have to be aware of what you are doing and plan ahead. You should group your members and then group all of your shots because you need to know what is doing what. So one last very important thing is about staging. Don't remember that because that will help a lot when you edit all your epics. And then I will give back to Jimmy about the tips when you shoot.
All right, back to me. First thing, if you're not familiar with what the slate is, this is a slate. This is what Bella uses all the time. Basically, when you're filming, you just say lights, cameras, and action. This is what you do, and they will generate a huge spike on your video. So later, if you're having a hard time deciding where in the video did the actual action starts, you use the spike video to clip it in. Shooting, the first tip is really interesting. So if you're shooting with a phone, you're always wondering how the. This is what I use. You learn Italian. You just use the Italian hand and you put your phone in there. So that way you can grip your phone really tight and you have a thumb for your video, a thumb for your video button. And then you just hold your hand with another hand, that's kidnapping Italian. And that helps you make really good shots. So you can move around freely, you can pan around, you can zoom in and out, all without really shaking at all. You have one hand stabilizing the other. And another tip off screen is that if you're shooting any video and you like to move the scene, make sure you prepare to move and not to move your feet when you're doing it. So basically what you do is you kneel down on the other feet, that is playing Tai Chi, and then you hold the camera and you just slide it over without having either of your feet leaving the ground. So that is really important because the moment your feet leaves the ground, your hand is out of control and your body is out of control. And second thing, well, now we achieve a steady footage. What about I just stand there and not move? No. If you're not moving, what is the difference between that and photography, right? If the person is doing something, you might get some very minute movement, but the surrounding isn't moving at all. So usually what the filmmaker will do is that you just pan around a little bit, or you zoom in and out just a little bit to make sure the background is still moving, so you're giving people a sense of motion and liveliness. And third thing, here are a bunch of small tips that are constantly on our notepad. So one of them is that you should shoot 60 FPS or slow-mo if you want really stable footage and if you don't care about audio. So the gist of that is that if you're shaking at this frame rate and your camera is capturing at a higher frame rate, you can basically slow down the footage to make sure your shakes are smoothened out to just very, very natural movement. And if you're shooting any walker or any person who moves around in the room, you should shoot from either the waist level or above the head. So you're giving a really nice storytelling shot. And some people will tell you it's the perspective if you're a pet or a kid. And also, if you're using a camera, especially mirrorless camera, you might like using the LCD screen, but that's again a no-no because when you're using the LCD screen, you lose control of your camera. Use the viewfinder so your nose can also support the camera and both hands form a 3-point harness of your camera. Then you can just move around using your own body. And finally, if you have multiple lenses on the phone, this is a huge thing today, right? We have a phone featuring 4 lenses or 5 lenses. And if you like to focus on the character, you use the telephoto lens. So what it does is that by the telephoto lens doesn't only zoom in, it also limits the angle of your perspective. So basically, you're capturing less of the background when you're zooming into the same degree to a person compared to our ultra wide lens. But if you just need to focus on surrounding, for example, a person walking down a really beautiful aisle, you should use the ultra wide lens so you're capturing as much surrounding as possible. All right, so now let's switch gears to engineering. This is our shooting parameter. We won't explain too much, but there is one number over here. So we're shooting in 4K usually, but if you're just having a first video project, try not to shoot 4K because that makes your editing a pain. We use 4K 17:9 cinema ratio because we like to really do cinema stuff. And we shoot in H.265 format, 4:2:2 chroma sampling. That will come really important later. 10-bit color, and we use the log color space. So if your camera supports log color space, usually it's not a phone. You can take full advantage of that because the log color space records much more information than a linear color space. And feel free to Google it. It's a lot of mathematical explanation, but in short, it makes your color look nicer. So what is this 4:2:2 thing? Actually, what is by extension this whole 10-bit color thing? That involves how we look at pixels. So here's pro tip number 1. What does a pixel look like? Can anyone tell any difference between these two pictures over here? No? That is correct, because these two are exactly the same images. I'm making a small joke here, but you see, if you try to explode the pixels into different channels, you'll see that these two pictures are really composed different ways. The first one is an RGB composition. That is a typical engineering composition. We think of colors as red, green, and blue. And the second one is really what the film industry uses more. It's called a YUV composition. And what it does is that it takes the inspiration that human eyes have separate cells for sensing light and sensing colors. And we apply the same principle to separating the channels of images. So the first channel, the white channel, is strictly luma. So basically, if you remove the other two channels, you still have a black and white image. And U and V channels are describing the colors. So we take the blue channel and we make minus the luma. And for V, we do the red channel minus the luma. So it's like a UV decomposition in math, but it's not exactly the same thing in math. But it doesn't stop there. If you buy a camera and the camera advertises 5 megapixels, it doesn't mean that there are 5 million pixels times 3 number of pixels inside a picture it takes. It just says, of course, that's what the data file will suggest to you, because you're making an RGB picture and you have 5 million dots, each dot consisting of 3 colors. It's not true about the sensors. The sensors is 5 million dots. And this is what a camera sensor looks like, by the way. The one on the left is called a Bayer sensor. It's the most popular one. It basically tiles different colors using a color filter, so different colors of different light colors falls into different pixels. And the right-hand side one is called an X-trans sensor. It's exclusively used by Fujifilm to simulate a film grain. But you can see on both of them, the gist of it is that the green content comprises of almost 50% of the entire image. That's because our human eyes are most sensitive to green, and that's why we want the sensors to be most sensitive to green as well. But when we take the picture, the sensor will try to decompose the image back to those colors. So your sensor is effectively just imagining colors for those pixels to film in. But it doesn't stop there. Here comes chroma subsampling. So when we're trying to compress down the image, if we have just all those RGB pixels, you're ending up with a really large image. So that's what we call 4x4x4. It just says if you tie it up into a 4x2 matrix, I actually have no idea why it's 4x2, you are preserving every single color pixel. But only only really million-dollar cameras recording this format. All cameras will compress your images down, to some degree. It doesn't only apply to videos; it applies to photos too. So if you go down a bit, if you go down a magnitude in camera's price tag, it's going to be 4x2x2. So what it does is that for every luma pixel, that is the lightness pixel, we just preserve the entire content. But for the colors, we shove it by half. What we do is we sample the left-hand side pixel and we just apply it to the right-hand side. So suddenly we have half the data for colors. But according to scientific evidence, human eyes doesn't see a difference. Do you see a difference in the picture? It doesn't. It's still it's a very decent picture. It's a very decent picture. Only expensive cameras can take. So if we go down a further level, this is the phone territory. If you buy a phone or any kind of DSLR or mirrorless camera, excluding a few, you're getting this chroma subsampling, and that means for every 4 pixels, you're sharing the same color domain, and still you can't see any difference in the picture, right? We wrote code to ensure that the subsampling actually happened on the picture, but you can't tell. So why are we bothering buying expensive cameras shooting those really dense pixels then? Well, it turns out the devil's in the detail. If you blow it up like this, you'll see really weird color artifacts on the 4x2x0 picture, and by extension 4x2x2. But in the 4x4 picture, you can see every pixel true to its real color, which is not true in any other pattern. And that means if you're doing any color keying, for example, this is a green screen. You all know what a green screen does, right? If you're filming in front of a green screen, you can use post-editing techniques to remove yourself. You can remove your green screen from yourself, and suddenly you have a perfect just human stuck onto something else that you can overlay. And this is an absolute disadvantage for phone video, because your phone video is gonna have these color pixels just coarsely tiled out. And if the editing software tries to tell which one is green, it will just sample the entire thing. And if you ever try the chroma key a human hair or something, you'll realize the hair is as thin as a pixel. But using the software, it will try to judge your hair by 4 pixel means, and effectively just cutting off your entire hair, or your hair will look really ugly. So yeah, that's the gist of it. But unless you're doing real CGI work, usually this is not a source of worry if you're just editing videos together. So at the end of this editing chapter, right after you finish shooting, here are 3 things that you should always have on your checklist. The first thing, copy everything to a computer. Definitely do it right after you shoot, because SD cards can fail, your phone can fail. And second thing is try to convert to optimized media if you're editing heavy. So that means if you're having multiple channels of video, if you're trying to do any CGI, you're trying to change the color of the video, or you're trying to do interesting transitions to the video on your editing software, convert it to optimized media. Most editors will give you this option. And third, rename the file. You don't want the files to look like DSCF3399 to represent some important life moment, right? So rename the file to either the shot number if you already have a storyboard, or just name it as whatever that's happening in the picture. And also, if that's an NG or a retake, you can put it in the suffix of the file, so the editor will be really happy and really grateful that you did that. So I just talk about optimized media. Many of you might have never heard about this thing. What optimized media, right? Don't we just shoot H.264 and watch H.264? We should have editing H.264, right? I mean, after all, your camera outputs the same format as you would watch on YouTube. Wrong. Introducing editing codec. So codec basically stands for encoding and decoding, and that means your video is being compressed in a certain format, optimized for playback or optimized for editing. And we have a specific suite of editing codec that probably all these names, you've never seen them. One of them is Apple ProRes. One of them is Avid DNX HD. If you have a really high-end camera, you'll see the option on the camera, but that's well beyond our price range. If you can't afford that camera, you shouldn't be in ECE. And finally, we have GoPro Cineform. GoPro doesn't shoot that format. It's also reserved for professional cameras here. All three formats have one thing fundamentally different from shooting and delivery, and that's why it's we're so tempted to convert the video right after we shoot. Here's an example. If we have these two pictures, the typical way we describe both pictures, the first one will be a running person in the center of the picture, and the second one will be a running person in the center, in the picture, slightly moved to the right, but looking exactly like the same, exactly like the first one. You spot the gist here? We can essentially just remove the second frame and describe the second frame as the first frame moved to the right by 20 pixels. And that's what our phone and all the video editors tricks here. So basically, instead of really storing that frame, we're just storing the delta between the next frame and the previous frame. And chances are your camera knows it, because you can't just jolt your camera to shoot an entirely different thing in the next frame. Your camera knows that adjacent frames look really similar, so adjacent frames don't get stored at all. And when it comes to editing, it's that if you're just having an intra-frame compression, that is, you store every frame and you only compress within the frame, when your editor wants a specific frame, we're easy, so we know it's random access. We're asking for a specific frame. The intra codec could just decode the specific frame, but it's impossible with whatever format that we're shooting with a camera, because in an interframe codec, you will have to yank out all these frames to compute into one frame, and that is a lot of access to a hard drive, definitely more than just retrieving a lot of computation involved. So just imagine your editor, because it tries to correct the color of the video, tries to do this every time for every frame when it's playing back real time. It will check your computer. And if you ever try recording off a camera, for example, our camera records into H.265 with really heavy compression, that if you try to retrieve one frame, you're effectively decoding 30 frames or so. It chucks any computer. You can't play it back. You can only play it back on the camera because of the chip. And that is why. So convert it, and everything will be good, and no one will be hurt. So first step in editing is dump everything into your timeline. You already know what to do, especially if you're filming a story. But of course, for montage, you already know what's usable, what's not. So dump everything into a timeline in the order that you want it. And the second thing for us, at least for us, is to pick a background music, because the background music has beats, and the beats can help you align your video to a specific timing. So usually you want to look for these tags called royalty-free music. But of course, if you have copyrighted music, you can play anywhere, but you just can't upload it to YouTube. Otherwise, you will get a copyright strike. So for royalty-free music, it basically says you purchase it once and for all, and you don't have to pay any royalty to the author of the music. So these are three labels that we use all the time. They are completely free, actually. They're effectively open source music. You have YouTube Audio Library, one that is built into YouTube Studio. And we also have no copyright sound. That's a big label for electronic music. So if you heard the music that we played in the intro, that's no copyright sound. And also, if you like to allow, the author or whatever whoever owning the copyright to earn a little bit by hosting an ad on your YouTube video, you can use MonsterCat. So for that, if you don't pay anything, they will run an ad in front of your video just like any other YouTube video, except for you don't collect the money, they collect the money. And here's a small tip. Is that if you get music, you can essentially start pressing the M key on most editors. M stands for mark, and you see every time you press M key, it leaves a little stone on the timeline, and that's basically where you want the transition. You can keep making these markers, so later when you're trying to plug the videos in there, it will just snap to your marker and you don't have to do any extra editing. So this is really good if you already know what the video will look like. You can basically start video looks like by listening to the music and just start start ramming that key. You need to know your editor. Whichever editor that you're using, whether it's a really simple to use one or it's an advanced one, it usually has these different categories of editing features. One of them will be you splice and overlay clips. If you have anything that edits video at all, you can cut the clips into a specific length and you can piece them together. So that's pretty much second nature to humans. But the second one that most people don't realize is that many editors allow you to change speed of the video. And especially if you don't need the audio from the video, that is, you have a background music, and if you don't care about the audio, you can change speed all you want to, suit the beats of the music, or you can make artistic expression just by changing speed all the time. And the third thing is that many editors allow you to adjust the colors of your video. But just remember, do all of these things after you have finished cutting together your timeline. That is, you dump everything into a timeline, you start ordering them, because you should never use transitions or effects to start wasting your time, tuning into all those things before you have a finalized timeline. Because by the time the timeline changes, you will need to erase everything and redo it, because many of them are baked into your video and you can only revert it. Yeah, so you need to make sure your dry run looks nice before you start dialing in the VFX. Otherwise, the VFX looks cheap too. So here's an example of retiming control. So I'm editing this video live. As you can see, we're just having two shots together with a small speed ramp over there. So as we swipe over to the other footage, you can see we just make the clip transition much faster, and that makes a really smooth transition. So here's a realistic example here. We have Mike walking downstairs. This is an absolutely crappy shot, as you can see. It's one of the amateur shots that we made. And he's sitting down at the table, a stack of paper onto the table. How about we use some retiming magic to make it look more smooth? Does that look better? But it doesn't stop there. Just spot it. Let's just play it once more. And spot this little weird pattern. The background is moving in the opposite direction from this transition to the other point. So you can essentially and suddenly the background is transitioning in a clean swoosh. But it doesn't stop there. Your editor has many more features than this. So basically, you can zoom in, you can pan into it. If you're shooting 4K, you will absolutely like this feature. You can pan into the footage and get a simple profile shot. And speaking of face of WaggleNet, that is Mike Mellon, who is sitting right here. And Mike Mellon is our in-house vlogger. He likes making all kinds of footages, and every time we're hosting an event, he would walk up here with a GoPro to ask us questions. Yeah, so Mike will be coming up here to share some of his experience with video making and help you achieve zero to hero performance, because that's what he apparently started with. With any kind of filmmaking. So if you have a project and if you have something to film, follow Mike on the journey of turning your so-so video into absolute epic. All right, Mike.
How's it going?
Okay, so I basically put together for you guys a little compilation of just some transitions you guys could be using for your videos. So I guess this is more for like vlog style videos. If you guys are into like Casey Neistat at all, have you guys heard of Casey Neistat? He's like probably the biggest YouTube vlogger ever. And I took a lot of these clips as inspiration from him. So I guess like the main idea when you're doing stuff like this is you kind of want to use distortion in the camera when you're transitioning from clip to clip. So the first one, that's kind of the classic. I have a microphone. Wait, yeah, you come help me with this. So I'll have Robbie as my demonstrator for this. So the first one is the classic, just kind of filming, and then you put your hand over the camera, and then that'll make the screen go black, and then you're going to transition to a different place. So then let's just pretend that Robbie transitioned to a different place. So let's say he's like outside now, and he's going to take his hand off of the thing. Do it again. He's going to take his hand off of the lens, and then that's going to cause it to be black and then go to a new environment. So you'll see that pretty soon, but these clips go fast, so I'm going to explain them first. So I guess the second one is a lot more active of a shot. It has a lot more motion to it. So pretty much what Robbie's going to do is he's going to be walking forward, and then he's going to take the camera and then push it down and then swing it back up. And that'll cause a lot of motion blur to occur. Show him how to do it. Like that, he's going to swing it up. And then during the next shot, you're going to be doing the same thing, except you're going to do it the same way. So it'll kind of look like you're doing like a 360 flip motion from one location to another. It looks really cool, trust me. You're just going to have to see it. The next one I can't really do. I kind of need like a water faucet to do it. So pretty much you're going to need a waterproof camera to do this too. So I really don't recommend doing this with your phone. But what you're going to do is you're going to take your camera and then you're going to put it under a faucet or dip it into water or something. And then what you can do is you could transition to like a lake or a beach and just kind of splash your camera around in the water and pull it out. And it looks like you're going from the sink to the beach. And then the last one's my favorite. I think I'm going to leave it as a surprise because I just really like how it looks. So, yeah, we'll start with... Just press space. Yeah, so this is the first clip where you put your hand over the... Do the same thing there. And then when you edit them together, it looks pretty smooth. I don't know what I'm doing there. But yeah, the transition from black from place to place looks really smooth with that, and it's like really easy to do. And you don't even need any editing tricks with it either. This is the flip up one. So I flipped the camera up like that, and then right here I'm gonna flip it from the down position. So then when I edit them both together, just a simple cut, it's gonna look like the camera's doing a full 360 motion. This is the bathroom one I was talking about. Yeah, you gotta high five your partner there, and then just drop your camera into the sink. I'm gonna like splash. And then during this next one, I'm gonna make sure to get like a lot of splashes from the water because you want as much lens distortion as possible in your footage to make for a really clean transition. So boom, and then drop in the sink. And it looks pretty clean, I think. That one's really cool. This last one, this is definitely an action movie scene. So I slide and grab the camera, and that kind of causes the camera to freak out. The slide looks really cool. And then what I do here is I put it up against my jacket. So then when I take it away from my jacket, you kind of get that exposure, so it fades to white. And then I'm just going to combine those two together right here. So I'm chasing Rob. Boom, grab the mic. Yeah, it makes for a really exciting vlog chase scene. So I guess the main idea with this is to just be creative and use as much you if you're transitioning from one place to another, just be creative in the way that you transition, because you want your films to be interesting. Everyone wants their films to be interesting. So be creative. Remember to use distortion and do everything physically, because adding that distortion with your camera physically makes it a lot easier for you than adding that stuff in post. Because I didn't do anything technical with this. I literally just took the two clips and then edited them together, no transitions or anything. Took like 5 to 10 minutes to do this. Yeah, and this will be pretty useful for something that I'll have Jimmy announce if you want to come back.
Right. Yeah. So just be creative, and you'll realize a lot of things within the boundary of your own equipment and techniques that you can do to make a film look like no other. So we have a competition for you today. This is a special announcement. So we have an engineering film festival coming up. It's called WaggleFest, and this competition you will make a 60-second video to showcase whatever engineering project that you're having, and post it to our Facebook event. So special thanks to College of Engineering and ECE Illinois for helping to support the event and helping us run the publicity. So basically the winner will get $25 cash prize for both the top RSO and the top class entry. And your outstanding videos will always be featured on official social media. So the way it works is this. So submission opens tomorrow, and try to scan the QR code. The QR code is clipped off. Try to go to Facebook and just tap into today's event page, and we'll post a link to this competitions page. So what you will do is to, starting tomorrow, post a video less than 60 seconds. It can be edited, but don't put any special effects or captions in the video. You can do a narrative, you can do a montage, or you can write up a story to do it, or you can just make a one shot and upload it straight from your phone, whichever format you like, and just post it to our timeline, and we'll start reviewing. We'll start reviewing beginning November 21st, and starting from that day, we'll start featuring outstanding entries to our official social media. All the links collected from these entries will become your score, and the top 5 will stand a chance of having this $25 cash prize. So we can't wait to give you that money. Closing note, engineers make awesome filmmakers. As you can see, many of these things that we're doing, they're just straight up engineering, or they're straight up creativity that no other people can think of other than us, the engineers. But it's more than that. So the world can't wait to hear your story. So start to tell your story now. First, you just need to have an idea. For us engineers, it's really no difficulty at all to come up with a killer idea. It's not even difficult for us to turn that killer idea into a killer project. But then what's difficult for us is to engineer something really amazing and really interesting that no one ever knows. So tell your story, tell it to the world, and only then your story will shine. And you'll become famous, and you'll get the money from us, and the college and our university will become famous because of your stories. So on the closing note, and action. Thank you very much.